This episode is brought to you by Atlas Direct Health. Atlas Direct Health is a walk in lab located in Columbus, Ohio. They provide fast, convenient, and confidential service, whether that includes urine drug screens, annual checkups, and more recently, COVID 19 antibody tests. They are located at 3055 Cleveland Avenue, Columbus, Ohio, and can be contacted by phone at 614 525 0092 or online at www.atlasdirecthealth.com. Assalamu alaikum. I greet you all with the greeting of peace. Welcome to the Muslim Founders Podcast, where we detail the lives of successful Muslims and take an in-depth look into their work while motivating others along the way. Today, we have a very special guest with us, 10-year NBA veteran, coach, and motivational speaker, a visionary and revolutionary before his time. Please help me welcome Brother Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How's everything?
Alhamdulillah, everything's going well. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your narrative with us. So for the people who do know you and the people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and why basketball?
Well, I'm from Gulfport, Mississippi. I was born in a single-parent home. To this day, I don't know who my father is, but I was born in the home of a loving mother, a dedicated mother. Worked very hard to provide for three of her sons, me being the middle child. I fell in love with basketball at the age of 9, 10 years old. I was attracted to sports early. I played some football, ran some track. I flirted with a lot baseball, but basketball was something that just I enjoyed more. And it didn't take much money because we didn't have much money to make it work. So, and I saw very early that I had athletic abilities, and I felt that I had a chance in becoming successful in the game of basketball. And so for me, that's why I gravitated to it more so than any other sport.
Talk about the drive to be able to pick up basketball. You said that you'd wake up early in the morning. What do you think? I know you said your passion started early, but what do you think was the reasoning that you were so dedicated to basketball? Obviously, along with the interest, what do you think fueled or led to the was a catalyst for this decision?
Now, a couple of things. One, I wanted to really make my mother proud. I wanted to do something that hopefully could get us out of the economic situation that we were in, and be able to provide for my family. Sports is something that when you definitely when you see it on television, the NBA guys, they're the ones who seem to have the money and the ability to be able to do that. And the other side of it was I felt at that age that was the best thing I had going for myself, or the only thing I had going for myself, because I didn't see a future for myself in anything else really, especially not academics. I didn't grow up in that type of background. So those are the two things that the combination between feeling this is all you got, you taught not to put all your marbles in one basket, but it looks like I'm going to have to, and put everything I have into it. And at the same time, the motivation of getting my mother out of and my brothers out of the ghetto, and being in a position just to help people. You know, when you struggle, you know what it feels like. Mm-hmm. And so those were among other reasons, but those I think were the most important reasons for me in waking me up every morning to go train.
And I know you talk about those drives that led you to choose basketball. What would you say, what role did basketball have in you finding Islam, and how did you find Islam?
Well, I mean, sports is that, especially when you get to the level where you're traveling, it's just not about elementary school and junior high school, but I started to get invited to go different places. Mississippi State, even though it was maybe about 5 hours or so away. And then from there, you invited to New Jersey. So you come across a lot of people with different views. But it wasn't until, again, going to LSU, basketball took me on those journeys. And, I came across a lot of people, not people of different, even in Christianity, different intellectual persuasions, how they saw things, people in fraternities, whether it be Masonic lodges. I mean, I came across a lot of different people, and basketball did that. It put me into contact with those people. And at LSU, I was just, my college coach ended up giving me the autobiography of Malcolm X when I was going through that transition and that struggle of trying to figure, and that was at a time when I was trying to figure out, I was really questioning, was Christianity what I should be following? Because I had many questions that didn't seem to get answered. And one thing led to another, and that book led me to look into Islam, and I never looked back since then. So basketball, sports did that, put me into contact with these people.
And it's actually interesting you mentioned that. Malcolm X is actually one of my heroes. I was recently watching the documentary that came out about Malcolm X. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on his soul.
Yeah.
You spoke a little bit about how basketball opened you to, open your mind up to be able to see all these faiths, but it narrowed it down to Islam. At what point did you feel like Malcolm X was following the right religion for you?
Initially, I didn't know,
Okay.
but I knew that what he was saying to me made sense, and I knew he had some things that I definitely still does that I definitely didn't have at that time. The courage he had, his insight, how he articulated issues. I mean, just in his fearlessness, it seems, just to speak his conscience. And I said that attracted me, but also just his views. Now, some I wrestled with, obviously. But most of what he had to say, I'm like, man, if this Islam could change this person from being, from going to prison and going through all that he went through and becoming this powerful person historically, I wonder if he could do that for me. And this stayed in my mind. And so eventually, the more I read, I ended up being drafted to Denver Nuggets. And there I was still professing to be a Christian. I met this pastor. Even though I was a Baptist, growing up Baptist, I met this guy who was a Catholic priest. And he had a protege named Mark James, lived in New York, but he was living or from New York, but living in Denver. And we became very close. Well, Islam came up in conversation. And even though I'd read Malcolm, I'd yet to go and pick up the Quran to see for myself. Mm-hmm. And so he mentioned it, that he met this Muslim brother and where we could go. And so we went to the masjid, picked up the Quran. I can remember I was feeling like a child on Christmas Day, and I mean, we were excited. I went and got it, came back. I couldn't wait to get home. And I opened it up, man. I was just curious because I just felt that there was something else. And to my not necessarily surprise, there was. And about 2-3 pages later, I remember looking across the table at him. I said, man, I don't know about you, but my search is over. I'm going to be a Muslim. Because
you knew right there and then.
I knew it because even though I only read 2 to 3 pages, what I read, and I can't remember what I read, but to this day, at 51, I still remember how it made me feel. And I still get teary-eyed when I talk about it. But I literally felt like all the questions that I had was answered at that moment. I said, man, look, this is it. My search is over. And I said, I'm going to be a Muslim. I'm going to be a Muslim. And he said, I'm going to be one too. And then after that, we went to the masjid. And every time I went to the masjid, every time I talked to someone, it's like whatever initially got me to the masjid, it kept me there. It's like every question I had was always satisfied. And so, and it's been that way all of 20-some, 30, whatever years I've been a Muslim.
I was going to ask, when was that? Was it 1919?
Now you get me to see 88, 90. I went to 90, 91. I think it was after my first year that summer. So I'm assuming 91, 92 wow. When I became a Muslim. Yes. And it's never failed to satisfy my curiosity and answer my question.
And you knew right there and then that was the faith for you? Because obviously, like you said earlier, basketball had opened your mind up to so many different viewpoints and philosophies and religions. But for you, you found your calling in Islam.
Oh, no question. You know something, man. When you find something that leaves no doubt in your mind, when no amount of endorsements, no contract, no profession, like you're literally willing, if it's a choice between, and I'm talking about this was early on, like when I found that out, it's like at that moment I had people telling me, hey man, you might want to be careful because you can lose endorsement. I said, man, I didn't accept Islam because of endorsements. I accept Islam because it's the truth.
And
this
people
is
were
what
fearful before 9/11. People were still fearful and shameful of their.
Of course. It's you know, whether you Christian, Muslim, or Jewish, if in this society, man, you know, if you're practicing, you're really trying to practice your faith, there's going to be resistance. I think it's always been that way, even with the prophets of Islam, right? Mm-hmm. It's always been that way. But you had people, yes, and look, those issues came up. Changing my name came up. Like you might, I'm like, listen, man, I'm accepting this because it's the truth. It's just because what I believe, you know. And so so you know something is for you when those things are non-issues. Like, look, man, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. Mm-hmm. You know, if I'm here, I'm here. If I'm not, Allah's auto-razak.
And no amount of money can force you to be something that you're not.
It's a done deal. You know, and that was my approach then, and it just constantly grew. Of course, the more you read, the more you talk to people, your confidence grows, your certainty, strength. You become more strengthened in terms of, you know, your belief system. And that's the way it was for me, and Allah continues to be that way.
Before you came into the NBA, what were some of the challenges that you personally faced in that, and how you overcame it?
Well, I mean, some of those challenges, I mean, it's common. It's a common feature in a lot of our lives in terms of African Americans who grew up in ghettos. You know, not all of us, obviously, but many of us grew up in broken families where there's one parent, not necessarily two. You know, oftentimes too, you grew up in a family where education is talked about, but it's not really the highest priority because maybe your family is not well educated. So it's hard for your parents to give you what they don't have, or to instill in you principles and discipline, right? In terms of being consistent with challenging your thinking and problem solving and critical thinking when you don't see that represented in their lives. It's hard to pass that on just by telling, hey, do this and get a degree. So those were challenges. You know, and just, man, the typical of not always having, you know, adequate food to eat, and, you know, the self-esteem issues that, you know, or the lack of self-esteem issues that come with that, right? Knowing that, okay, you're poor, right? Knowing that you don't have the best of this and the best of that, but also understanding that I was different physically, and the fact that I had, and for years I knew something was different about me, but I didn't know necessarily, there was not a name for it. And it wasn't until the 11th grade that I was diagnosed with having Tourette syndrome. So all the way up from elementary to the 11th grade, your body is responding and acting in ways that you can't explain. That's different from everybody else's. And you're getting joked about it, ridiculed about it. You know, they're counting you out as a result of it. And these are things you're constantly struggling and fighting against as well, trying to figure out your body and, you know, your purpose in this world and what this means to you, along with all this other stuff that's taking place. And but I was just fortunate, man, to have some people in my life too that saw past that and saw me as an individual, and still didn't use that or allow me to use that as a crutch to where it crippled me and pushed me and challenged me, and at the same time encouraged me. Like, man, you got something, right? And so, yeah.
So with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and your drive to get through adversity, along with the environment of people that you had, in the circle that you had, you were able to overcome it, alhamdulillah.
No question. And even though I wasn't a Muslim at those early stages, I'm always grateful to my my grandmother, my aunt, my uncle in particular, for always instilling in me the concept of a higher power, which is God, and always in control. And you have to be mindful of that relationship. Even though I came to find out later that some of those theological discussions or arguments weren't necessarily, as far as I'm concerned, there were some flaws in it. But in terms of the
overall arching
foundation
theme
and the meat of it, like that, God is the all powerful. You know, you must be responsible and committed to that, because you will have to answer. And even as a child in elementary, I walked the streets and people didn't know it, but I would be praying in my head, oh, please, God, guide me. Please forgive me. Please have mercy on my soul. Please don't let me die, in a state. And even today I do that. I don't walk around like this, but my mind, we call it dhikr now, right?
Yep.
Remembrance. And I'm constantly, but that was something that was given to me early, and so also this idea that everybody has strengths, but we also have weaknesses, but God gives us strength to overcome those weaknesses. So for me as a child, I'm looking at this Tourette syndrome not as a crippling thing, like, okay, oh, my life is over. There's nowhere in the world I'm going to be able to be sick. No, I'm saying, no, God doesn't give me a burden that I can't bear. He gave this to me for a reason. So it's up to me to find out the lesson of it and turn that lesson into a blessing, so to speak.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. So he's merciful, and especially merciful. He's merciful to everybody, but he's more merciful to the believers. So even if a person isn't believing, God is still merciful to them. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still setting you up for you to become who you are now.
I agree.
And even helping you through that time. And it's interesting you mentioned how that you said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the famous saying where they say, God doesn't make the mountain smaller, he makes the climb easier. So I'm really glad that, alhamdulillah, that you mentioned that. So now kind of moving forward, give us a quick recap. I know you were the third pick in the NBA draft, highly sought after. You played 2 years of college basketball. You were a 2-time SEC Player of the Year. For those who don't know, you were the best in your conference. Both those years, averaging, I think, 27 and 30. You played with Shaq. What was that like? Talk to us about briefly your time playing with Shaq and your time playing in college. And I know you discussed it earlier, but from more of a basketball perspective.
Well, first, even just before going to college, man, just going through the whole elementary, junior high, high school, different divisions, man. I still pinch myself, literally, when I think about all that Allah has blessed me to go through at this size. Not just, I'm not a tall guy, but I'm not an enormously big and buff guy either. And to be able to pretty much dominate almost every level that I went on. So going to college, man, for me, I'm thinking to myself, okay, your vision is big. I dream and I think big, but at the same time, you try to be realistic to keep a balance, so to speak. And understanding that, man, there are a lot of people out there working just as hard, if not harder. They're going to be, many of them are going to be taller and bigger, probably just as fast. So I remember the journalist asking me, Kent Lowe, I think his name was, and he said, what do you want your career to stay for itself at LSU when it's all over? I said, man, if I can average about 12, 13 points a game and 7 assists for my career, I said, it'll be a decent career. I meant that. It would be decent. But of course, my vision was bigger. But you can't always tell people your vision because they may think you're arrogant. They may try to talk you out of it. Who are you to dream that big? But my vision was like, no, I want to dominate. And I remember the first game, I literally had about 12, 13.7 assists. Second game, I had 21. And I'm like, wow. And I noticed something. I said, man, that 21 came easy. This is what I'm telling myself. I'm like, wow, I was just cruising. And at that time, Dale stopped me at the locker room and he said, we need you to score more. So I said, I'll try. And that third game, I had 48. Fourth game, 36. Fifth game, Florida, I had 53. Then
And you still remember to this day, you still remember what you scored?
Yeah. And it just, because it was surreal. It was like, this is something that you dream about. And literally you envision as a child dominating, exciting crowds and you know, making your mama proud and all of that. And you know, creating a name for yourself. And it's playing out almost exactly the way you dreamt it. And so it's hard not to forget those moments. And so Shaq came after that first year that I played at LSU. And because we had Stanley Roberts, who also was like 7'2", but he was redshirted. And so that second year, Shaq came in, and with all the talent that we had, this is the thing we constantly, how in the world could you guys not win it with 2 7-footers? But there's a lot of details. But it was an experience, man. Shaq was definitely confident. He wasn't lacking in confidence. He was a hard worker. He was intense. He had a vision for himself. Even at that time, he had mentioned, he said, man, I want to be the first guy to make about 80, 90 million in the NBA. And at that time, that wasn't, nobody was even, what nobody had ever made. And then he must have had some foresight, you know, whatever insight that this was going to eventually happen. But he ended up making that and well over it. But it was just, man, it was fun. It was a fun time.
What was your relationship like with him? What was your relationship like with Shaq?
Well, you know, just like anything, man, there's some people you click with better off the court. Off the court, I forget who, I think he hung around more with Dennis Tracy and somebody else. My guy at the time, because we came in together as roommates and we're both from Mississippi, was Vernell Singleton. And then Stanley Roberts, because we all came in together. So outside of the court, we hung together, and then they had their clique. But on the court, everybody pretty much got along. We competed, we worked together, we had fun. But that's just life. Never really had anything negative or bad feelings, you know, for Shaquille. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know recently they retired your jersey at LSU. How was that like?
Yeah, man. Look, it's a humbling experience. I'm super grateful that, you know, anytime that someone, man, takes the time out to recognize you and to appreciate the work that you've done by the grace and mercy of Allah, I mean, you're humbled by it and you're super grateful. And there's a lady in particular, man, who literally, I was so mad at myself after the event because things happen so fast and you write these names down and you know you're going to miss names. And then I'm like, okay, I got to mention this person. And then afterwards, like, oh my goodness, how in the world did I mention her? She started this whole doggone thing for about a year. Her name is Katrina Dunn, out of Sacramento. And she's the LSU alumni, man. And she really called me and she said, Mahmoud, this is a shame. This has to be done. She said, there's nowhere in the world that your jersey shouldn't be hung. And I was like, I could take it or leave it, because as I told her, I said, look, if it happens, I'm super grateful and humble. I said, but if it doesn't, let me tell you my position. I said, a part of me don't care. A part of me do. Why? Because there's a history of people erasing our history. Right? Mm-hmm. And if that jersey is hanging up there, especially if that jersey has Abdul-Rauf on it, and people 10, 20, 30 years from now happen to look up in those rafters and they see Abdul, who was that? And they go look it up and they read about my life. If there's something in my life that could encourage somebody to look deeper within themselves and enhance their relationship with Allah or become better people, that's worth it for me. For that reason, I would like for it to be up there.
But nothing, that could be no personal gain for you. It's just more about.
No, well, it is in a way, because we believe in Sadaqah Jariyah, right?
That is true.
Right. So I'm like, man, I need all I can get. We all do.
Absolutely.
But the other part of that was, I said, I don't care. I said, because I can't take these accolades and these accomplishments
on Yawm al-Qiyamah and say, Allah, I average 30.2 points a game. My jersey is retired. Let me in the Jannah. That's not going to benefit me. So in that way, I said, I could care less. That doesn't, I don't care. So I was like up and down with it. But you know, these are people that work very hard to see it happen, man. And I'm forever grateful to those people because they didn't have to do that. Yeah.
No, and that's really it's really extraordinary what they've done for you. And I absolutely agree with that being Sadaqah Jariyah. You're saying one day, you know, maybe one person looks you up and says, okay, you know, who is this man? What did he leave behind? And be an inspiration for others the same way Malcolm was an inspiration for you. It's funny because Shaq said during that, it was really, really exciting listening to him when he was talking. He was saying that he believes you're the greatest LSU basketball player ever. And I'm telling you, that says a lot with Pete Maravich, Shaq, you. So, and if one of the greats is saying that, that's pretty hefty. You talked earlier about being undersized and not being at the average size of the normal NBA player. That kind of sounds a lot like a superstar amongst us now in the NBA, Steph Curry, and you get a lot of comparison to him. Talk to us about what that's about and what that's like.
Well, there's always going to be comparison. That comes with the territory. And I'm not offended by it whatsoever. Actually, if you compare me to a guy like that, I'm again, I use this word a lot, but I'm deeply humbled that I would even be mentioning that in the same breath, because he's a phenomenal player, very skillful, could dribble with both hands, his ability to pass, to create space, to shoot the ball at different ranges, quick release. So there's definitely some similarities there. When you're talking about, if you just singling out skill, not numbers, because right now they have a fluorescent light that we didn't have. Sometimes we had a green light, but they have a fluorescent light. They can shoot anywhere and don't have to look over their shoulders. And it's a different ball game now, which is beautiful. But it's nice to see, man, especially people my size getting out there. And even though he's bigger than me, he's about 6'3". But it's really nice to see guys like that still being able to perform at those high levels amongst the trees, right? Because it gives these younger people hope that, you don't have to be tall to make it, right? So it's nice to see.
You mentioned that, you know, very humbling, being compared to Steph. He's a great amongst our era. I know you've played with some of the greatest ever. One of them being against Michael Jordan. How was that like? And kind of transition into your time in the NBA. And what are your favorite moments? And what were your saddest moments, or the moments where you didn't feel as confident about yourself coming into the league?
Oh wow, that's a lot. Well, Michael Jordan, he was a super competitor. And you, as a basketball player, I mean, everybody's different, but for me, when you step on the court, you're always trying to leave a legacy. You're always trying to be the one that when the game is over, win or loss, they remembered you. So you're competing. But it's something about knowing you're on the floor with a guy that they're already looking at as probably being, or that's going to go down as being one of, if not the greatest to ever play the game, arguably. It does something extra. It raises the level of focus and intensity. So just stepping on the court with a guy like that always, for the most part, brought that attitude out more. So, and that's just a tribute to his competitiveness. It's hard for me to choose favorites because there's so many great experiences or so many things that I love. But you know, for me, man, in terms of just games. Beating the Chicago Bulls when they had that winning streak was.
But they were 41-3, I think.
Yeah, but I think they had like an 18-game winning streak without losing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we broke it. Now, of course, I would have loved to have been on the championship side, but it was nice for them to come to our building and me to have a good game, that particular game.
You had 32 points, I believe, in that game.
Right. Also playing against Utah, John Stockton and Karl Malone after a concussion in Boston, because we just didn't like Utah. You know, it was like, oh, we can't stand them. You know what I mean? And just to go and defeat them and end up with 51, that's memorable for me as well. After the concussion, and winning against the Seattle Supersonics, the 8th seed being the first seed, and kicking them out of the playoffs.
The upset,
yeah, that's historic. So those are memorable moments for me in the game. Now the sad moments. When I first got to the league, man, I was depressed. I trained all the wrong way, listening to people, not listening to myself and my body. And that was a very difficult time for me, because I was really contemplating after all of those years of playing, man, is this what I really want? I started second guessing myself. So I wasn't really putting in everything, because I was half one foot in and one foot out. And it wasn't until I read this, I walked into a grocery store and I saw this magazine, and I'm flipping through it. And I saw where they mentioned me, and they said, he's a bust. And that lit a spark. Nobody wants to be a bust.
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment, the next day, man, I started, because it was the summer. And I started, or right before the summer, and I started, man, training like like I used to train. And I came back, I think 40 pounds less. Ended up that next year having the most improved in the league. But that was a real downtime for me, just not knowing what I wanted, being depressed, not knowing if I wanted to play basketball anymore. And then there's some of it too, just after becoming a Muslim, the challenges that you had to, face with people questioning, nitpicking about praying before the game, especially if you lose, right? After games, people having to wait on you because you're praying. After you lose, not when you win. Questioning if you should fast or not, right? And you constantly, it seems, had to look, man, this is what I'm following. You don't have to follow it. This is what I'm going to do. And you had to be firm. You had to keep your feet down. But the more that happened, people began to see, especially if you're doing well, they begin to leave you alone. They say, you know what, man, let him be. He's doing him. He's coming. He's professional. He's taking care of his business. But this is what he's going to do. Right? So leave him alone. And so what happens, from my experience, they ended up, I think, by and large, respecting me for holding my ground, for not giving in. And so those are challenges that just comes with the territory, man, because you're doing something different than most. You're not going out. You're not partying. You don't have girls coming and going in every city, right, in your hotels. You have brothers meeting you at the hotel. You staying up all night talking about deen, politics, religion, history, right? You just having that type of time and looking at you like, man, you're not a part of the country club. Yeah, we don't know if we can trust you, right? You suspicious. You're not doing what we do. Well, I don't have to do what you do. I'm here to play basketball.
Right? You had one job to do, and it wasn't partying.
Yeah. And so my lifestyle outside of that, I wasn't interested in what you were doing. And for some people that can pose problems. People begin to question, and it becomes an issue of, okay, is he really a part of this team? Or can we trust him? Or, we don't feel comfortable, right? Look, man, I'm not analyzing your life like that. I'm not keeping tabs on you. I come, I train, I play basketball, then I do my thing. You do your thing. Lakum dinokum waliyadin, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's your religion, mine is mine. Absolutely.
Mashallah.
In the sense of respect, right? And it's not saying I'm forcing mine on you and you can't force yours on me.
Right.
So on the topic of being Muslim in the NBA, your basketball season ended short due to your refusing to stand for the national anthem. Walk us through what that was like.
Well, when I became Muslim, prior to becoming Muslim, even though I could read and spell, I didn't read a lot, right? Because basketball was what I was absorbed into, consumed with rather. But after I became a Muslim,
And I didn't know that it was highly recommended. I thought it was obligatory. During the month of Ramadan, you got to read one part of the Quran. So I'm like, okay, alhamdulillah, I'm down. Let's do it. I've committed to this thing. So I ended up finishing the Quran. And for me, that was an accomplishment. Like, you know, I finished a book, and this is a thick book. And on top of that, you begin to have dialogue. You begin to talk to people. You know, they know, okay, Mahmoud, he's in the NBA, he's a Muslim. Muslims meet you in almost every city. And so you come into contact with people of different madhabs, different ways of looking at the world. So I'm soaking everything I can in. Along the way, they're introducing you to books and authors. Now, at this time, you're reading. You got like a little system, a consistency with reading and learning, having dialogue. You're liking it. Like, wow, people are listening. And then I'm learning, and this feels good. And then I'm applying, and man, a lot of this stuff works. It makes you feel good. You see the possibilities. So you get inspired by it. And I started to read stuff, man. They were introducing me to books. Of course, you got the Quran, you got the Seerah, you got all the different tafsir out there that's dealing with these issues. But they're also introducing me to authors like Howard Zinn, Noam Chomsky, Gore Vidal, Randall Robinson, Kawanza Kunjufu, and Neil Postman, and Arundhati Roy. I'm like, wow. And so I'm reading this stuff, and I'm hearing what these people are saying about foreign policy, domestic policy, poverty, the system. And I'm like, wow, hold on. All of this is going on? I knew something was wrong growing up in the ghetto, that some of this stuff don't make sense, but you can't put your finger on it. But when you begin to read, and all of these scholars and these heavyweights, you know, the Eric Michael Dysons, and you name it, the list is profound. Like, wow, man, this is going on. And then I'm listening to what Allah is saying, right? Speak out against justice, even if it's against yourself, right? And all these things, and the example that the Prophet ﷺ left, right? And I'm like, man, I can't be, as Allah says in the Quran, like a donkey with books on his back. You got all this knowledge, this information. What you gonna do with it, Mahmoud? You got to take a position. You know, and if Malcolm is your inspiration, if the Prophet ﷺ is if these are the people that inspire you, and this is what they stood for, the way to prove that they inspire you is to try your best to follow in that footsteps. It's not going to be easy. It never has been, never will be. And so for me, those are the things that begin to, I start looking at things differently. The system. And I said, I can't do it. I can't see myself, because this is not representative of, one, what you say it represents. Two, you know, as a Muslim, we don't, and people argue, and this was some of the argument then when I did it, you know, we don't embrace this nationalistic, you know, my nation regardless, you know, over your nation. No, it's about, Allah says he set the criteria of what's right and wrong. You know, so whoever you are, wherever you are, if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. I don't care if I was born here, right? I'm not just going to embrace this nation simply because I was born here and I have a job here, and to ignore all the other things that's happening. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going out like that. And so that led me, and I'm paraphrasing all of this, that led me to say, I just can't stand, I can't do that. And it caught wind of people in the NBA. Or outside of the NBA, a journalist. And Todd Ely came to me, the assistant GM, and he asked me, did I want to do an interview? I said, I have no issue. Because at that time, I'd made up my mind that I have to start living up to what I say I follow, right? And, you know, when Allah tells us, enjoin good and forbid evil, or as one particular imam said, institution, or you who are committed to Allah, institutionalize what is just. Make an institution of justice and deconstruct the institutionalization of injustice. You have to take position. And so that's what led me to do that, and to continue to do that even up to this day.
Do you think you would have done things differently if you were given that same chance again, or what would you do differently?
Well, it's easy to say when you look back
and especially if you feel that you've grown more from that time to now, I would like to say that I would have, yes, certainly, no question, did it again because I'm still doing it. I haven't stopped. But I would like to say that I would probably be more seasoned in the sense of not passive, but with the connections that you've met along the way, the things that you've read, I would like to say that it would have probably been more profound with the information that I have now as opposed to then if I was in that situation again. This is one of the reasons why, man, I really admire and I felt envious in a good way when I heard about Kaepernick and when he took the position that he took. Mm-hmm. Because not only did he take it and did he say something about it, but he had a network with him that he works with. And it almost seemed as though they had got together and they had developed a strategy. Like, we're going to hit this, but also we're going to hit the ground. We're going to send food to Somalia. We're going to do this to the prison system. We're going to establish this Know Your Rights campaign, right? We're going to have a system in place. I didn't have that at the time. That made me envious. And it inspired me even more so, you know what I mean? I'm like, man, that's what I'm talking about. You know, because this is the way, inshallah, I mean, everything happens for a reason, but these are the things, this is taking it to, you know what I mean, another level. And it doesn't, and I'm sure he did more. You know, we don't always broadcast what we do. There are things we do that only Allah and the people know. But it's good to broadcast certain things too, because it could be an inspiration for others. And at that time, in my life, not a lot of that was done to broadcast for that to happen. Again, we didn't have social media neither, which is a different dynamic. You know, the media controlled more so the narrative. Here, you can control your narrative much better, right? People could come out and they can say what they want to say. And one of the examples I give of that, and that's one of the differences, I think, when I took my stand, and the Craig Hodges and all those other people, and when Kaepernick took it, is that social media can give you an advantage too. When Abdullah, the football player, Muslim brother, went into the end zone and he went into prostration, the NBA immediately said, we're going to find you and we're going to suspend you. People got on social media and they said, what about Tebow? The NFL pulled back. We didn't have that. The media could post and present what they want, you know, reject what they want. You know, the population really didn't have that type of power and voice that they do now. So, but it's a beautiful thing. And he utilized it, I think, and continued to utilize it to his advantage to get his message across.
And you make that point. I truly do agree that information era has definitely changed things. And you garner a lot of comparison to Colin Kaepernick, just as much as you do with Steph Curry. The nation was divided, right? It was divided when you were going through what you were going through. And kind of the same thing, they were divided with Kaepernick as well. But there was a certain community within the American ecosystem that was unfairly taking a different stance than you had projected it to be. And that community is the Muslim community. I know Sheikh Hamza Yusuf spoke about it. He said that a lot of Muslims weren't on your side, and the same people that you hoped were defending you weren't. What was that like, and how did that make you feel?
Well, man, you know, we all have different experiences. You know, some of the experiences that they are coming from in their countries, right? It's different from the experiences that we have here. There's similarities as well. And so a lot of that came more so from, and I hate using this word immigrant, right? But a lot of that came from the immigrant community. And a lot of people felt, as I also felt at that time, that they were soft on the issue. There were feelings of just wanting to assimilate.
not wanting to, what's the word I'm looking
to not
for?
stand out and just to
not wanting to make
label.
noise. Yeah, not wanting to, take a position, right? To be liked, right? Not wanting that type of friction coming their way. So I think a lot of it was as a result of that. And then some of it is just people's also their understanding. I can read the Quran and you can read the Quran. And you could get something different from me. Sometimes it could be incorrect. Sometimes it could not be incorrect. It could just be, okay, you see it this way, I see it this way. Islam allows that to take place. Those 2, 3 outlooks, because Allah says, in this Quran, I've explained things in various ways so that you may receive guidance. So just because it may be different, you just may have a higher understanding than me, right? And so some of it is, I think there's a lot of mixture when it came to that as to why, but this was a time I felt when we could have united and came together on something, because we're all being oppressed, right? When one member of the body's in pain, the rest of it is affected by that. And whether you're Sunni, whether you're Shia, whether you or in Afghanistan or Somalia, or wherever you are, when Muslims are attacked, they're not attacking you because of your madhab. They're attacking you because of you're Muslim. They're attacking you because, you have an ideology and a belief system that they look at as a threat to their hegemony, their supremacy. So I'm like, wow, this is an opportunity for us to bring these issues to light, right? But as usual, people are people. The system is very crafty, and they find these little holes to widen, right? When they see gaps, like, oh, we can take this, we can show this, we can show that, and that's what eventually happened.
And no
alhamdulillah.
Yeah, and no offense to the immigrant community of Muslims at the time. It's different. As a Black Muslim myself, and me being from Somalia, my experience as a Black Muslim is a lot different than the African American Muslims experience in America. With the history and all of the experiences that African Americans have faced over the last 400 years, it's really hard for me and Muslim immigrants to be able to look within the African American lens and say, hey, just do what you're told. You're paid $2 million a year to do one thing and just stand for the anthem and do what you're told. Kind of a lot like the language that some of the people that are against.
Shut up and dribble.
Shut up and dribble. Shut up and just do your job. Do nothing else, and do as you're told. So, moving from that, and to wrap up the podcast, talk to us about what you're involved in now and some of the nonprofit work I know you're involved in, and as well as coaching and mentoring NBA future and current NBA players, and the big three.
You said something important about the concept of shut up, do your job. Before getting into that other stuff, man, I just think at that time and even now, that is, I'm trying to find the word for it. I can't think of the word I want to use, but for me, that is one of the most derogatory things, right? You can tell a human being, I'm not going to allow you to reduce me to just this basketball player. I'm more than a basketball, and all of us, we're always more than what our profession is, whether it's a father, a teacher, you name it. And that's something that, after becoming Muslim, man, that I also made a commitment that I'm going to fight against, because there's this tendency when you are in a certain profession to try to limit that person and say, well, you can't step out of that profession. You have Bill Bradley, who was an NBA player. Now he's in politics. You got so many people doing great things, so don't try to limit me. And then you take my taxes every year. You say that I have this freedom. You say that I'm supposed to, right? But now when I utilize it, now you want to say, well, how dare you, right, do that? And I understand that there's so many little details, but really what I've been doing a lot lately, and I love it. I love it, man. I love giving back, working with humanitarian organizations. One in particular, man, is the Mahmoud Foundation. doing a lot of great work, man. I mean, I love brother Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, just the work, man. Hudasek, you know, we've been on the road together, and whether it's in Jigjiga, whether it's in Somaliland, man, and just to see overall, it's just not about, and the concept that a lot of these humanitarian organizations have is what we as Muslims constantly are pushing. It's like the old adage that you give a person a fish, they eat for a day, you teach them how to fish, they can eat for the rest of their lives. They're giving in a way that sustains them, whether it's supporting farmers, teaching them how to do that, whether it's education and providing them with the tools, quote unquote, empowering women, water wells, right? And how to put all of those together and using, and water is the source of life, you know, providing food, you know, for the indigent and the poor. I mean, it's just a host of things, man, that they're involved in. And I'm just super grateful that all these organizations feel that I have something to contribute, because really they're doing the work. They've created the organization. They've created the relationships. They've created the trust in the people in what they've been doing all of these years. And if you call me, man, if I got time, I'm jumping to it, because I need all the Sadaqah Jariyah that I can get, right? So really, I'm super thankful and grateful that they are utilizing me to be a part of this thing. So that's something that I've been heavily involved in, and I have a great passion for. Also, you know, I still train professionally. I train NBA guys. But also I'm in the process of putting a book together. I've been talking about this for years, but right now I'm like super, super close, and I can't mention anything about who it's with because it hasn't come out publicly yet. But I can say that we've been interviewing writers, very, very well-known writers. And so, inshallah, when it happens, you'll hear about it. And I think you're going to be surprised when you hear who it's with.
Now, is it somebody that we all know? Is it somebody that's well known?
Maybe. I'm not. Look, you're good, but I gotta leave some suspense.
No, I respect that. That gives us more time to be able to be more curious and wait for when it drops. Now, you mentioned that you work with you coach and you work with current NBA players. Are you able to name for us those NBA players?
Well, I can name some that I've worked with. I've worked with Oladipo. I've worked with Malcolm Brogdon. Actually, before he, I worked with him 2 years before he went to college. But I worked with DJ Augustine, Farouk Aminu, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jerry and Grant. So, alhamdulillah. And potentially there's some more that's on the horizon right now.
And I know you can't.
Some of the younger players that I'm looking to work with and get them in the gym. But I love that too, because again, it's bigger than basketball, right? You're able to sit with them and hear their views on certain things, and who knows, maybe I can say something that could inspire them, you know, beyond basketball, and vice versa. It's always a two-way street.
Absolutely. What some of the rumors are going around, and I heard on your IG live right now when we're being quarantined, that's our go-to for entertainment, that you could be coaching or working with the potential #1 pick of the 2020 draft, LaMelo Ball. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, it kind of slipped. And after I said it, I said, oops, maybe I shouldn't have said it as fast. But it's not written. None of this stuff is written in stone until it happens. Mm-hmm. But it was definitely mentioned. And it seemed to be some excitement about making it work. I'm definitely excited. I mean, I like him. I think he knows the game. He seems to be very intelligent when it comes to, you know, basketball as well as off the court. You know, I heard that he ended up purchasing a team overseas that he played with. Like I said, this is still a part of my life that I love very much. I have a passion for it. I'm still able to get out there and show the moves, which helps. So I hope that it goes down. That'll be interesting to see, especially since I think he's projected to be. I don't know how things have shifted, But the last I heard was from some time ago, he was projected to possibly be number one.
You spoke a little bit about, you said still being able to play, alhamdulillah. Talk to us about the big three, because you still play. At the age of 50, you're still going out there giving buckets to former NBA players, the likes of Nate Robinson, and so on and so forth. So talk to us about that and still having the drive to be able to play this beautiful game.
Yeah, man. It's a blessing. I'm pretty much, I work out pretty much every day doing something. Sometimes 2 a days for a week or two. I mean, I'm always mixing it up. Just turned 51 in March.
MashaAllah.
Man, look, this is, the fact that Ice Cube had put this together, and this is going on the 4th year. And you don't have too many opportunities when you get to this age to still play on this level. And so I'm grateful to him for inviting me, allowing me to come. And then I'm grateful for Rashard Lewis and the team for picking me up, giving me a shot. I've always prided myself for the most part and trying to stay healthy and in shape. This year, man, I'm working religiously. I'm trying to come back and even defy the odds even more, be younger and more explosive and more in shape than before. I'm really looking forward to it. If of course this coronavirus thing dies down, and right now I think he's still talking about having it maybe in a closed environment in California. But inshallah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited about it, especially playing against a lot of young guys that still have a lot of their youth. And I joke with them. I say, man, you got everything to lose. I said, I'm 51 years old. I said, if I have a game and I'll outplay you, you look bad. I said, if we have a game and I have 18 and you have 22, you still look bad. I said, if you happen to get the best of me that game, you had 15, I had 2, 4. I said, they're going to say the man is 51 years old.
Right. You lose both ways.
Exactly. So I kind of say that to put pressure on them. They be out there sometimes all tense, like I can't let this do. And sometimes they work too hard and it works against them. So I'm trying to get in their head a little bit.
That's the nicest way of politely talking trash.
MashaAllah.
So playing for the big three and still working out, I see that you still have the same drive that you had for basketball when you first fell in love with the game. What would you advise young basketball players now, especially young Muslim basketball players? There's a whole lot that have their eyes set out on playing college basketball and potentially trying out and playing in the NBA.
A lot of things, but if I were to mention core, of course, man, always Allah first, middle, and last. Keep Allah in your life. But focus on you. It's about doing things the right way. And what I've always been taught is fundamentals are the building blocks. You don't start with building the roof to a house first. You build its foundation. And it's about paying attention to details. And so when you start working on your fundamentals and you want to work on them, once you get the technique, you want that to become something you do consistently every day. But you're not going through the motion. You want to train like you're going to play, with that same intensity, same speed level, right? Explosive cuts when it's time to make them, And so you want to train like you're going to play. It has to become a lifestyle. Anytime you're trying to be great at something, it has to become a lifestyle. So, and the fundamentals are the building blocks to the fancy stuff. If I can go through my legs, if I can go behind my back, if I can inside out, if I can cross over, and if I can do that without someone on me, without looking at the ball consistently, right? Then I start practicing when somebody's on me. When you're able to do those things singularly, then that's how it becomes easy to start putting combinations together. Go through my legs, crossover, step back through my legs, right? But you have to,
a lot of people, they look at, oh, this is boring. We go through these training sessions to where we want people to train us, but because we have short-term memories and we're easily bored, we want a whole bunch of stuff in the in that one and a half hour session, but we become the jack of all trades but the master of none. If you want to master something, you have to take that thing, and I tell people this, and I say, take 3 moves a day. For every move, there's a counter. For every counter, there's a counter. Take a move, work on 3 moves a day until you don't have to think about the steps that you have to take. You've worked on it so much. The next day, review it for 10 minutes. Add to that move. Now, you're still going to be doing the same thing, but you're adding to it now. Do that. At the end of the week, if you take 3 moves a day and work on that move 3-4 hours a day, at the end of the week, what's 3 times 7? You have 21 moves. You don't have to think. Now, you're still going to do that throughout the rest of your life, but that's how you develop skill. And that's when the game becomes easy. So if you want it, there's a process. And this is one of the things that I tell my NBA clients. This is one of the things I tell the ones that are not NBA clients. And there's and in leaving, and I know we got to go, but one of the things I tell them is this: there's a difference between being great and wanting to be mediocre. Different attitude. If you want to be great, and people think I'm crazy when I say this, but it's true. If you want to be great, if you're not, this is what I tell them: if you're not flirting with death when you're training, or if you're not contemplating quitting, you're not working hard enough. If your legs are not shaking and you don't feel like you're about to die and lose your breath because you're pushing yourself so hard, you ain't trying to be great.
You're not putting enough work in.
No, you ain't trying to be great. You're just talking about greatness. And it's okay if you want to be mediocre and good, but there's just levels to everything.
It's funny that you say that. I remember I met you. You might not remember, but I met you in spring of 2017 in Seattle. I was visiting Seattle. You were there as well. And then we never got a chance to play our one-on-one. So inshallah, you're dropping free game here and free knowledge to youngsters. But I want to make the record straight. Inshallah, we will get our one-on-one game in. I look up to you, brother Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for all the great work you've done, for inspiring so many Muslims like myself, and for paving the road for millions of Muslims to be able to not fear and not have fear about their faith. And not only Muslims, but people in general, to be confident Muslims, to truly express how you feel without disrespecting others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make easy for you all your affairs. I'm really, really happy that you sat down with us today and that you're able to talk with us about your life experiences and how you are and how you've become who you are today. So thank you.
Thank you, Ak, for your words, man. I look up to you too, man. Continue to do the stuff that you're doing. I mean, what you're doing right now is not easy. You know, establishing this platform, and I hope that it serves as a source of sadaqah jariyah for you. And I'm looking forward to that one-on-one, but you better hurry up and get it before it's too late. Because if you get me and I can't hardly walk, and if you win, it don't count.
I promise I won't wait until you're 60. I'll try to get you the next year, inshallah.
All right, all right.
All right, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.